Have you ever wondered why do Gon and Meruem never interact, let alone fight? The answer to this question is rather short and lies in the fabulous world of simple geometry. The parallels never cross. Hello comrade, my name is Mahis. Come, get yourself a beverage and sit down with me. We got 2 characters to arc. Let me start with my 2 cents on a very old argument. Hunter x Hunter is not a deconstruction of a shonen genre as a whole, but it does use a deconstruction of a common trope every so often. For example, by every anime standard, the good MC and the big bad should cross rulers to measure whose backstory is the longest, saddest, and after a very close, sometimes even cool fighting montage, the good would prevail and everybody lived happily until the next bigger and badder. However, what do you do if you want to write the protagonist to not be exactly good and the antagonist to not be exactly bad? Well, you can do a villain is a hero of his own story, or you can do what Togashi did and swap their positions, where by the end of the narrative, we're no longer sure who is who. Meruem goes from being a ruthless monster to becoming a humble human, whereas Gon does the opposite. Granted, our boy's journey to his darkest side didn't start neither at King's birth, nor even at the beginning of the Chimera Ant arc. It started way back on Whale Island, where he grew up accompanied mostly by wildlife as opposed to humans. He had a loving aunt, a great-grandmother, and a tight-knit community which gathered to wish him well before he took off to the exam. He even showed tourists around town on several occasions, but it's the actual cougars and other fluffballs who set a baseline for his personality. Gon behaves like an animal, instinct-driven and pretty damn selfish, which is further reinforced by him learning about his father and the whole hunter thing. Why? Because how else do you cope with the fact that your own father abandoned you to pursue his own interests? Only by adopting a mindset that this hunter business is so damn important that it overrides everything else. Which by extension made Gon believe that whatever is important to him is the only thing that matters courtesy of how Jing behaves, and in combination with his animal-like mindset, it shaped a very skewed, polarized image of the world where there are no shades of grey nor traditional morals we're all used to. His internal logic places people into 3 categories by following a simple rule. If they benefit me or my close ones, they're good. If they pose a threat to me or my close ones, they are bad. And if none of the above, they are irrelevant. Note that in this case, good and bad doesn't mean the person's moral standpoint nor what they do on a daily. It's strictly the relationship between them and Gon. Take the snake Chimera Ant. He certainly killed people before and now wants to murder a literal child. What does our Kite Avenger do? Give him a few smacks and use his body to shibari a tree because he didn't pose enough threat to be classified as bad and didn't provide enough practice to be called good. Who cares that after he wakes up he could have learned Nen and went on a killing spree in another country? Certainly not the MC, even after seeing his mentor indiscriminately disposing of, or attempting to dispose of, every Chimera Ant they saw, including the base ones. Gon has no self-awareness, let alone any self-reflecting capabilities, which is why he doesn't really change throughout the show. Him losing Nen completely is a further proof of that, because if you look at his character from episode 1 and 148 side by side, you'd see very little difference. Killua, for instance, would no longer kill 2 randos who bumped into him even if they were rude. But Gon is still the same selfish hypocrite, albeit much more experienced and a bit more mature on account of him apologizing to Kite. Don't believe me? In the very first chapter, he forced a stranger to kill a mother fox bear, which led to him adopting its cub to save it from certain death. Then he saw spiders caring about their friend, and after that, a Chimera Ant healing a human. How do you reckon it affected his black and white worldview? It didn't. He chooses to ignore complex moral dilemmas, which stunts his character growth, and thus his development focuses more on character exploration rather than evolving him throughout the show. That's why I think of parallels in this case. There can be a lot of similarities between them, as well as some fundamental differences. Where did Meruem start? Also on an island, except that this time it's a metaphorical island of his quote-unquote place in the world. Yet, unlike Gon, he does question his destiny, his actions, and even his own thoughts. Within weeks, he arrives to what Zuko couldn't do for years, to look inward and begin asking yourself the big questions. Who are you, and what do you want? He took only one step outside his comfort zone to jumpstart the sequence, and the reason for that is very simple. He, as weird as it sounds, doesn't have an ego that would prevent him from exploring this new development. Yes, there is a degree of arrogance with him thanks to the king status, but the Chimera Daddy never had to prove anything to anyone, so he is free to express or think of himself in whatever way he pleases. Which brings me to an interesting point. In my last video, I've said that Gon's morality is inversely proportional to his current stakes, and I've never realized that Meruem's morality is the complete opposite. The higher the stakes for him and his close ones are, the higher his morality is. Let's go back to him being all pumped up, saying that Komugi's life depends on my mood and I only play the stupid game because I'm bored. Bullshit. Because as soon as he saw that the person he spent some quality time with was in trouble, all of that talk about killing her went out the window. He is very impulsive, just like Gon or just like any other child. Remember, he might be very smart and physically mature, yet his life experience, which is what turns us into proper adults, is very limited. That's the key difference between the two. Our boy had years to form and solidify his mindset, while the king has his entire character sheet blank outside of a few descriptive words like the ruler, super strong, and so on. No wonder he changes so rapidly, since unlike Gon, who's carrying around a truckload of baggage, Meruem has little holding him back. However, this is where we need to ask the following question. Would have he turned out differently if he spent more time with the Chimera Ants or just mindlessly killing people? I think yes. If he marinated in this environment for longer than a few weeks, he most certainly would have been harder to redeem, and even Komugi might have not been enough. Although, there are certain intrinsic qualities this board game enthusiast has that are indicative of his open-mindedness and ability to think in a good direction. Take how he handles defeat, like an absolute chat. No fuss, no getting frustrated, just the desire to beat his opponent while they're at their best. Very similar to Gon, by the way, but while our boy is thinking of what he didn't achieve, the king focuses on what he can achieve. We don't see it much, as he never had to think too far into the future outside the board games, yet after experiencing a potential loss of a person he cares about, Meruem starts to apply this rational foresight in the real world. First, he ordered Pito to protect Komugi, then to treat her while he takes the fight elsewhere, and finally, during his confrontation with Netero, he went as far as to not retaliate in favor of having a discussion about the future. He could have killed, or at least severely injured both of them here, but decided to completely remove impulsivity from the equation, which is something I can't say about Gon. Look at them sitting down. Complete opposites and so similar at the same time. The villain is borderline begging his opponent to have a civil conversation, while the hero is itching to fight and even threatens an innocent bystander to speed up the process. Actually, this is the first time the king repeats himself without making a big deal about it, whereas the MC is cutting Pito's time shorter and shorter every time he gets to speak. I love this detail so much, especially for Meruem, who in his dying moment does the thing he hated to do from day one over and over. Now we should probably talk more about people around these two. There are many parallels here too, some superficial like the most important person having white hair, and some a bit more substantial like how they try to influence the subjects of this analysis. Say Royal Guards. They provide a lot of input on various aspects of Meruem's life, and he often listens to them, as shown when Pito recommended dispatching humans without destroying their head. Gon, on the other hand, given his stubbornness and selfishness, totally ignores Kite's lesson of killing ants by damaging their brain until the very end. Again, he just can't consciously change his ways even with the help of people around him, so instead he doubles down, pushes them away, and gets further stuck in his head. The king also does something similar with getting rid of the Guardian's presence and isolating himself with his thoughts. Yet he processes them to the point where he reunites with his close ones and embraces them, knowing full well they are not entirely truthful with him. It's subconscious at this point, as he lost memories of how he got to this mindset. That's a very interesting duality. The Royal Guards are trying desperately to shape Meruem into the ruthless king he's supposed to be and failing, while Gon's friends are trying to get him to chill out and also failing. For example, the ants are avoiding Komugi like the plague so as to focus on how bad the humans are, and the Hunters party is not telling about their experience with Yuppie in order to not complicate their friend's dilemma any further. Even separate individuals are acting oddly, how can I say, almost mirroring each other. Shoot is standing there contemplating how the young hunter is changing Knuckle, doesn't want to attack Killua, the white-haired important person, but has to, and is ashamed of being in this position. Conversely, there is Pooh, who contemplates Komugi changing Meruem, wants to attack her but mustn't, and is ashamed of being in this position. Togashi does great with visual storytelling, like with the example I just gave, or with our parallels sitting as if in front of a mirror, and he did so from the very beginning. Think of how we got introduced to these characters. A happy-go-lucky kid going on an adventure where, within the first episode, he's selflessly jumping overboard to save a seaman while simultaneously breaking up a fight between two randos who he decided to trust to catch him in a nick of time. He appears almost benevolent without as much as a trace of bad qualities until he becomes friends with a remorseless assassin, uses other people's death to his own advantage, and even disregards his own life to achieve his goal. Similarly to that, the first time we see Meruem, he C-sections himself out, diagnoses a severe lack of respect in some penguin, and quickly administers a French treatment for his condition. He later shows signs of having something good inside thanks to Komugi, but initially there wasn't a speck of humanity in sight, as his savagery was so extreme that some of his own people said "oh shit" and fucked off to the enemy. You couldn't have made these two more different at the start of their journey, yet somehow they ended up switching places. There are a lot of scenes where Gon and Meruem are shown in a similar fashion, and I can't be the only one who thought that, for example, they both had the same energy when walking into the tower to kill someone, so I went to forums, videos and other threads to see what people had to say, and there was someone who summarized the Chimera Ant arc better than I could. A monster turned human when he found the right person, while a human turned into a monster when he lost his. There's a bit more to this arc obviously, but that's the core concept. Humans and monsters are two sides of the same coin. I always come back to Netero when I think about Meruem's transformation. He didn't know about this third party the extermination team was talking about, nor witnessed Yuppie's evolution. All he saw was a monster caring about a fragile girl, not taking advantage of his enemy's hesitation, and desiring to have a conversation rather than fighting. He knew right away that this was not a cut and dry situation, but he suppressed this line of thought in order to complete his mission. Just like the king, his mind was open to changing his views, which once again is something I can't say about Gon, who no longer considered his friends' opinions, let alone his enemies. I don't have a segue into this next observation, but I have to point out how they were both in a remarkably similar position, stuck with an opponent who didn't want to fight and had to find leverage to get their way. Netero offered the only thing Meruem actually wanted, and Gon threatened Pito with the only thing she didn't want to risk. You reap what you sow. It doesn't 100% fit the situation, but at the end of the day, the conclusion to their stories reflects the road they walked and leaves them on opposite sides. Gon ruins his own future while Meruem's is taken from him, Gon's friends get to live while all Meruem's close ones are dead, and lastly, Gon went out miserably while Meruem died happily. It was I, Machias, tearing up for the second time in this video. Have a great whatever time of the day you have. Until next time, cheers.